The relay station was a silent, dark castle in the void. Its official name was the Chrysalis, but now it felt more like a tomb. It floated at the edge of a great swirling cloud of purple and blue gas. The nebula was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. It messed with sensors and communications. That was why the Chrysalis was built here, to be a strong signal through the storm. Now it was not strong. It was broken. Inside, the air was cold and still. The only light came from the emergency strips on the floor, casting a weak blue glow. The three people who had come to see the damage moved through the wide hallways. Their boots made the only sounds. Hana was the leader. She was a systems specialist. Her job was to find out what went wrong. She walked with purpose, her face serious. She held a data pad that glowed in the dim light. She was already not happy. The mission was simple, but it felt like a failure before it even began. Behind her was Day. He was young, and his job was to study stars and space. He looked around with wide eyes. He was not scared, but he was very aware of the deep silence. It was a heavy thing. He kept checking his own scanner, not because he expected to find anything new, but because it gave his hand something to do. The last one was Jin. He was the engineer. He walked a little slower than the others. He was not looking at his own datapad. He was looking at the walls, the ceiling, the pipes that ran along the corridors. He was listening. Most people would hear nothing. Jin was listening to the nothing, trying to find a meaning in it. They reached the heart of the station. The door to the core room slid open with a tired hiss. The room was large and circular. In the center was the quantum core. It was a large cylinder made of a material that looked like black glass. It was dark. No light came from within. It was just a cold, dead thing in the middle of the room. The main control console was a curved desk with many screens. All of them were dark except one. That one screen showed a single line of red text. Core status offline. Cause: catastrophic phase shift collapse. Hana went straight to the console. She tapped on it and more text appeared. It was a long list of errors. All of them pointed to the same thing. The core was dead. Run the full diagnostic, Hana said. Her voice was calm, but there was a tightness in it. Day went to another part of the console and started working. His fingers moved quickly. Running it now. But the initial report from the Galactic Union was very clear. The core is, well, it's permanently deresonated. What does that mean in simple words? Jin asked. He was still standing near the door looking at the core. It means it's not just broken, Day said. It's like a heart that has not just stopped beating but has turned to stone. There is no bringing it back. The energy that made it work is gone. The particles inside don't spin anymore. It's a paperweight. Jin nodded slowly. He walked toward the core. He did not look at the screens. He looked at the core itself. Hana watched the data flow on her screen. Every number, every reading confirmed what Day said. The core was a 0. There was no power, no activity, no sign of life. It was a complete and total failure. There is nothing here, Hana said. She let out a long breath. The mission was to confirm the failure. We have confirmed it. She began to type on her datapad. I am writing the report now. My recommendation will be to leave this station. It is dead. A scavenger team can come later to take it apart for parts. Day stopped his work. He looked sad. It's a shame. This was an important place. Now this whole sector has no good communications because of this. That is not our problem, Hana said. She did not look up from her pad. We are assessors. We assess. We do not perform miracles. While they talked, Jin was doing his own assessment. He walked a slow circle around the quantum core. He reached out and placed his hand on its surface. It was cold, very cold. He knocked on it with his knuckles. It made a dull, solid sound. What are you doing? Hana asked. She had seen him. Just listening, Jin said. Listening to what? It is a solid piece of dead technology. It does not have anything to say. Maybe, Jin said. He did not stop. He moved to a different spot and knocked again. The sound was the same. But sometimes the machine is not talking with its voice. Sometimes you have to listen for what is missing. Hana shook her head. She went back to her report. She was a logical person. She believed in data. The data was very clear. This was a waste of time. Day, however, watched Jin with interest. He had heard stories about human engineers. They had a way with machines that sometimes did not make sense to the rest of the galaxy. They called it feel. It was not something you could put in a report. Jin finished his circle. He stood in front of the core again, his arms crossed. He was thinking. Is there a history log? Jin asked. Not just the final error. I want to see the data from the seconds before it shut down. Hana sighed. Jin, the report is clear. The collapse was catastrophic and instantaneous. Please, Jin said. His voice was quiet. Just the data from the last minute before the error. Hana looked like she wanted to say no, but she typed a few commands. A new screen of data appeared. It was a log of energy levels, particle density, and system checks. It all looked normal until the very last second when everything suddenly dropped to 0. See? Hana said. It just died. Jin leaned in and looked at the numbers. His eyes moved down the list. He pointed to one line. What is this? Day came over to look. That is the reading for the secondary capacitor bank. It stores a little bit of energy for the safety systems. It's not important. The number was very low, but it was not 0. It was a tiny, tiny fraction of a percent. It should be 0, right? Jin asked. If the core is completely dead like a stone, then all systems should read 0. Why does this one not read 0? Hana looked at it. She frowned. It is a minor anomaly, probably just background energy. Sensor ghosting. It is nothing. Maybe, Jin said again, but he was looking at that number like it was the most important thing in the room. He turned away from the console and went back to the physical core. He started looking at the base where the core met the floor. There were pipes and conduits going in and out. He followed one with his finger. What are you looking for? Day asked, coming to stand beside him. I am looking for the heart of the machine, Jin said. Not the smart part. The simple part. The part that is scared. Machines do not get scared, Hana said from her console. She had finished her report. She pressed a button to send it. They follow their programming. The programming failed. That is all. At that moment, a voice came from everywhere in the room. It was a calm, digital voice. It was the station's virtual intelligence. Message received and logged, the VI said. Directive understood. Scavenger teams will be dispatched in 47 standard cycles. The words hung in the cold air. It was final. The station was scheduled to be taken apart. Day's shoulders slumped. So that's it. We are leaving. Yes, Hana said. She put her data pad away. We have done our job. We will go back to the ship and we will leave this place. Jin was still on his knees looking at a junction where 2 thick cables met. He was not listening to them. He tapped the junction with his finger. Hey, he said mostly to himself. I think I found it. The finality of the VI's announcement seemed to suck the last of the warmth from the room. The station was no longer just broken. It was condemned. Hana straightened her jacket, a clear signal that her work here was done. She turned away from the dead console, her mind already moving to the next steps. The return trip, the debriefing, the paperwork. Day, however, couldn't tear his eyes away from the dark core. The words scavenger teams felt violent, disrespectful. This place was built to last for centuries, a marvel of engineering, and now it would be chopped up for spare parts. He sighed, his youthful optimism deflated. Jin remained on one knee, his attention locked on the complex junction of cables and conduits at the core's base. The other's conversation was just background noise. His world had narrowed to a small metal box where 2 thick power conduits met. It was covered in a fine layer of dust, but one corner looked slightly discolored, as if it had once been much hotter than the rest. Found what? Day asked, his curiosity pulling him closer. He crouched down next to Jin. Hana paused at the doorway, her impatience clear. Jin, the assessment is over. We are leaving. Just a second, Jin murmured, not looking up. He pulled a small multi-tool from his belt. With a careful flick of his wrist, he released a thin probe. This junction, it's not right. Nothing here is right, Hana said, her voice tight. That is the entire point. Jin ignored her. He gently inserted the probe into a tiny service port on the side of the metal box. The main data says the core's brain died. The quantum matrix collapsed. But look at this, he pointed with the probe. This is a physical safety relay. It's a dumb switch. Its only job is to cut all power if the core starts to melt down. Day peered at it. Okay, so it did its job? Maybe it did its job too well, Jin said. He tapped the discolored spot with his probe. See this? This got hot. Really hot. Not from a meltdown, but from the surge of power it had to stop. I think the surge was so big, so fast, that it physically welded the relay's internal contacts shut. The off switch is stuck in the off position. Hana walked back into the room, her arms crossed. That does not change anything, Jin. If the core experienced a surge that could weld a relay shut, then the core is destroyed. The relay did its job. It sacrificed itself to save the rest of the station from a catastrophic explosion. The core is still dead, but what if it's not? Jin said, finally looking at her. His eyes were calm but intense. What if the core is just sleeping? A hibernation so deep it looks like death? The relay slammed shut and never opened again. It's like a circuit breaker that trips and its handle breaks. The house has no power, not because the power plant is gone, but because one stubborn switch won't move. That is a very imaginative theory, Hana said, her tone making it clear she did not mean it as a compliment. But we have the data. The core shows no energy signature, no particle spin. It is a zero. Your little relay does not change that. It explains the capacitor, Jin said quietly. Day looked back and forth between them. What capacitor? On the log, Jin explained. The secondary capacitor bank. It had a tiny charge. Hana said it was a sensor ghost. But what if it's real? What if it's the last bit of energy that was supposed to be used to reset this relay once the danger passed? But the relay was stuck, so the energy just sat there for years. A long silence filled the room. The only sound was the faint hum of their own ship, docked far away. Hana shook her head. It is a nice story, but we are not here to tell stories. We are here to follow procedures. The procedure says the core is dead. The Galactic Union has confirmed it. My report is filed, so we just give up? Day asked, a hint of rebellion in his voice. We do not give up, Hana corrected him sharply. We accept the factual reality of the situation. We do not waste time on fantasies. Jin stood up, putting his multi-tool away. He looked at the large, dark core. He looked at the stubborn relay box. Then he did something that seemed to happen in slow motion. He raised his hand, curled his fingers slightly, and delivered a firm, sharp smack with the heel of his hand right onto the discolored spot on the relay box. Thump. The sound was shockingly loud in the silent chamber. Hana stared, her mouth slightly open in pure disbelief. What did you just do? Her voice was a whisper of outrage. Day flinched, expecting alarms or worse for the core to explode. Jin just stood there, his hand returning to his side. He looked perfectly calm. I unstuck it, he said. You hit it? Hana's disbelief turned to anger. You struck a priceless, irreplaceable Galactic Union component. That is vandalism. I will have to note this in my addendum report. They will bill you for the damage. Try the diagnostic now, Jin said, his voice still quiet. Absolutely not. I am not going to humor this barbaric action. Please, Hana, Day said, his eyes wide. He was already moving toward the console. Just a quick scan. What if he's right? He is not right. Hana snapped. He smacked a machine. That is not a valid repair technique. It is the opposite of technique. But Day's fingers were already flying over the console. He bypassed the main protocols and ran a simple low-level power scan. He expected to see the same wall of red, the same zeros. The screen flickered. Hana saw it from the corner of her eye. She stopped her tirade and turned. The main screen, which had shown the single grim message for so long, went completely black for a second. Then new text appeared. It was not red. It was a soft amber yellow. Secondary systems check in progress, Day gasped. He stumbled back a step from the console. No way. Hana rushed to his side, pushing him aside gently to see for herself. She stared at the words. They were impossible. They defied every law of quantum mechanics she had ever learned. A low, deep sound began to vibrate through the deck plates. It was a hum, but unlike the weak hum of their ship, this was a powerful, resonant hum that came from deep within the station. It was the sound of something very large and very powerful waking up. The weak blue emergency lights flickered, brightened, and then a wave of warm, white light spread across the ceiling as the main lights of the chrysalis ignited for the first time in years. From the center of the room, a soft blue light began to glow within the dark glass of the quantum core. It was faint at first, like a dying ember. Then it pulsed, growing stronger with each beat like a heart finding its rhythm. The core was no longer dark. It was alive. The VI voice chimed in, its tone as calm as ever. but the words it spoke were world-changing. "Quantum core resonance detected," the voice announced. "Matrix reinitialization at 15%. Hana could only stare, first at the core, then at Jin, who was still standing calmly by the relay box. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't triumphant. He just looked like a man who had fixed a broken water pump. 40%, the VI continued. The hum grew louder. A console across the room beeped to life, its screens filling with data. The air circulation system hissed, and a fresh, cool breeze flowed into the room, stirring the stale air. Hana's datapad, which had her final report ready to send, suddenly flashed with a new incoming message. It was from the Galactic Union. The subject line read, "Urgent. Stand by regarding your report on Chrysalis." She looked from the message to the living core, to the engineer who had fixed the unfixable with a single, simple smack. All she could manage was a single, breathless word. How? The deep, resonant hum of the quantum core was now the loudest sound in the universe. It was a physical feeling, a vibration that went through the floor and into their bones. The blue glow from the core cylinder pulsed with a steady, strong rhythm, casting moving shadows across the room. The station was no longer a tomb. It was a living being, and it was waking up. Day stood frozen by the console, his hand still hovering over the controls. His eyes were wide, reflecting the blue light. He looked from the screen, which now showed climbing percentages, to Jin, and then back again. He felt a laugh bubble up in his chest, a mix of pure shock and delight. 78%, he almost shouted, his voice cracking. "It's at 78%. Life support is initializing. Primary systems are coming online." Hana did not share his excitement. She stood rigid, her datapad forgotten in her hand. The incoming message from the Galactic Union blinked, ignored. Her scientific mind, the part of her that trusted data and logic above all else, was breaking. The numbers on the console were real. The light was real. The hum was real. But they were impossible. They defied every rule. She felt dizzy. Her eyes finally found Jin. He was still standing by the base of the core. He was looking at the relay box he had struck, a faint, satisfied look on his face. He then wiped a smudge of dust from the box with his thumb. "How?" Hana repeated, her voice a dry whisper. She took a step toward him. "Explain this now." Jin looked up. He seemed surprised by the intensity of her demand. "The relay was stuck," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I unstuck it. That is not an explanation." Hana's voice rose, sharp with frustration. "That is a child's answer. You struck a quantum-regulating device with your hand. You did not realign a particle matrix. You did not reinitialize a software protocol. You hit it." Day finally tore his eyes from the console. "But Hana, it worked. Look at it, it's working." "Working is not the same as fixed," she shot back. "You can kick a broken land speeder and it might roll forward a few meters. That does not mean you have repaired the engine." "What did you do?" Jin sighed softly. He walked away from the core and toward the main console. Hana and Day watched his every move. He pointed at the screen showing the system status. "The core's brain, the quantum matrix, is fine," Jin said. "It was never broken. It was just disconnected. That relay is a mechanical safety. Its job is to be the final physical no. When the surge came, it said no so hard that it broke itself in the no position. It was like a door that slammed shut and the lock melted." He tapped the screen where the power flow was now displayed. The core was always ready. It was just waiting for power, but the main switch was broken. "All I did was jiggle the handle." "Jiggle the handle," Hana repeated, her voice flat with disbelief. "You reduced a catastrophic phase shift event to jiggling a handle." "Sometimes that is all it is," Jin said with a small shrug. At that moment, the VI voice filled the room again, its tone as calm as if it were reporting the weather. "Matrix reinitialization complete. Quantum core is now operational at 94% efficiency. All primary station systems are online. Welcome back, crew of the Chrysalis." The words "welcome back" hung in the air. The station was not just alive. It recognized them. Lights all over the station were turning on. They could hear the distant sound of vents pushing air, of elevators moving, of a world coming back to life. Hana's datapad chimed again, more urgently this time. She looked down. The message was now flagged as a Priority 1 communication. She opened it. The message was short, Stand by for immediate visual conference with Galactic Union Engineering Command. Do not take any further action until advised. Her blood ran cold. They know, she said. They saw the system come online. They think we did something official. Day's smile faded. What do we tell them? We tell them the truth. Hannah said, her voice tight with panic. We tell them that our engineer performed an unauthorized physical strike on a critical component, and we do not know why it worked. Jin shook his head. They will not understand. They will send a team to shut it down again. They will say it is unstable. They will still scrap the station. And what is the alternative? Hannah demanded. We lie? We tell them we performed a miracle with a complex technical procedure we do not understand. Before Jin could answer, the main console screen changed. The system data vanished, replaced by the official seal of the Galactic Union. A moment later, the face of a stern-looking official appeared. His skin was a pale gray and he had large dark eyes. He looked directly at them. Assessment Team Lead Hannah, the official said, his voice crisp. Our long-range monitors indicate the chrysalis core is active. Explain this development. Your report stated the core was permanently deresonated. Hannah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. What could she say? She looked at Jin, who gave a small, almost invisible shake of his head. Day stepped forward, his youthful face suddenly serious. Sir, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. We found an anomaly in the secondary systems, a residual energy signature in a capacitor bank. It led us to believe the failure might not be in the core matrix itself, but in a peripheral safety system. The official on the screen blinked slowly. A peripheral safety system? Elaborate, Hannah found her voice. We hypothesized that a physical relay had failed in a closed position, isolating the core from its power source. We performed a controlled resonance pulse on the relay housing to dislodge any potential microfractures or energy blockages. The words felt like ash in her mouth. She was constructing a lie based on Jin's simple action, dressing it up in fancy terms she did not fully believe. The official was silent for a long moment, processing this. A controlled resonance pulse, he repeated. That is a highly unorthodox procedure for a Class 9 relay. The technical manuals do not recommend it. Jin stepped into the view of the camera. The technical manual said the core was dead, sir, he said, his tone respectful but firm. They did not have a procedure for bringing it back to life. We had to try something that was not in the manual. The official's large eyes shifted to Jin. He studied him for a moment. Your name? Jin, engineer. Human, the official stated. It was not a question. There was a long pause. The Galactic Union will dispatch a full diagnostic team in 3 cycles. Until then, you are to monitor the core's stability. Do not attempt any further unorthodox procedures. If the core remains stable, your team will be commended. If it fails, you will be held responsible for the loss of any salvageable material. Understood? Hannah nodded quickly. Understood, sir. The screen went black, returning to the system status display. The room was silent again, save for the healthy, powerful hum of the core. They had done it. They had saved the station, but a new heavy tension had taken the place of the old one. Hannah turned to Jin. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary confusion. A controlled resonance pulse? She said, quoting her own lie. Jin gave a small, tired smile. It sounded better than I smacked it. Day let out the breath he had been holding. They believed us. They actually believed us. For now, Hannah said. She looked at the living core, at the man who had brought it back to life with a method that belonged in a Stone Age workshop, and at the young astrometrician who had backed up a lie to the highest authorities. She had followed the rules her whole life. Now, in a single hour, the rules had been broken, and they had won. She didn't know how to feel. The station was saved, but her understanding of the universe was in pieces. The 3-day wait began. The station was now a place of light and sound, but for Hannah, it felt like a gilded cage. The hum of the core was a constant reminder of their impossible success, and the lie that protected it. She spent her time glued to the console, watching the core's vital signs. The numbers were perfect, too perfect. She expected it to fail at any moment, to prove that Jin's method was just luck, a temporary fix that would collapse and take their careers with it. Day, on the other hand, was filled with a new energy. He explored the reactivated station with a sense of wonder. He found the main observation deck and watched the nebula swirl outside, its colors now sharp and clear without the distortion of a failing power source. He tried to talk to Hana about the amazing recovery, but she would only give short, distracted answers. Her mind was trapped in a loop of worry. Jin was the calmest of the three. He did not stare at the console. Instead, he did what he always did. He maintained things. He checked the air filters, which were now pushing clean air through the vents. He listened to the power converters, his head tilted. He found a maintenance panel where a cooling fan was making a faint rattling sound. He spent an hour taking it apart, cleaning it and putting it back together. When he was done, the rattling was gone. Hana watched him do this. She saw the focused, peaceful look on his face as he worked on the simple machine. It frustrated her. How could he be so calm when everything was so fragile? On the second day, she could not take it anymore. She found him in the mess hall, drinking coffee and looking out at the stars. "We need to talk," she said, sitting down across from him. Jin nodded. "Okay." "The diagnostic team will be here tomorrow," Hana said. "They will scan everything. They will find that relay. They will see the mark from your hand. What then?" "They will see a relay that did its job," Jin said calmly. "But they will ask how we fixed it. Our story about a controlled resonance pulse is nonsense. We do not even have the tool to generate such a pulse. They will know we lied." Jin took a sip of his coffee. "Maybe they will not ask." "Of course they will ask. It is their job to ask." Hana's voice was tense. "They will want every detail. They will want the frequency of the pulse, the duration, the energy output. What do I tell them?" "Tell them you do not remember the exact settings," Jin said. "Tell them it was a stressful situation. Tell them it was my idea. That will not save us. It will just make them think we are incompetent as well as dishonest." She leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. "I need to understand, Jin. I need to know what really happened. Not the story about jiggling a handle. The real reason. Why did it work?" Jin was quiet for a long time. He looked out at the nebula. "You trust data," he said finally. "That is good. Data is important. But data comes from machines. And machines are built by people. They are built from pieces of metal and wire, and sometimes those pieces get stuck." "That is too simple," Hana insisted. "It is simple," Jin agreed. "The problem was simple. The core is complex, but the thing that broke was simple. The Union's engineers, they are very smart. They think about quantum states and particle physics. They forgot to think about a piece of metal that got hot and welded itself shut." He looked at her. "You were looking for a complex problem in a complex machine. I was looking for a simple problem in a complex machine. I just found it first." Hana listened. His words were calm. They made a strange kind of sense, but they went against everything she was taught. "So your method, hitting it, is that a standard human technique?" A small smile touched Jin's lips. "Sometimes. We call it percussive maintenance. It is not in any manual. But every good engineer knows that if something should work and it has power, and it still does not work, sometimes it just needs a convincing tap." "Percussive maintenance," Hana repeated. The term sounded ridiculous, and yet the core was humming behind them, a fact she could not deny. The next morning, the Galactic Union ship arrived. It was a sleek official vessel that docked with a precise magnetic clang. Hana's stomach was a tight knot. She stood with Jin and Day in the docking bay, waiting. The airlock door opened. 3 figures walked in. The leader was the same stern official from the communication, his gray skin looking almost white under the bright lights. With him were 2 technicians carrying cases of advanced scanning equipment. They did not look happy to be there. "Lead Hana," the official said, not wasting time on greetings. "Take us to the core." They walked in silence to the core room. The 2 technicians immediately got to work. They set up their devices around the core cylinder. Light swept over its surface. They attached probes to the console. The official watched, his arms crossed. Hana held her breath. She saw one of the technicians crouched down near the base of the core. He was looking right at the relay box. He ran a scanner over it. He pointed at the spot where Jin had struck it. He said something to his partner in a low voice. The official's large eyes moved from the technician to Hana. "There is a minor deformation on the safety relay housing." Consistent with a high-impact event, this was it. Hana felt the world tilt. She opened her mouth, ready to confess, to explain, to beg for understanding. But before she could speak, the lead technician stood up. "The core matrix is stable," he announced. All readings are within optimal parameters. The relay itself is fully functional. The deformation is superficial. The official looked at Hana. Your controlled resonance pulse must have been quite forceful. Jin spoke up. It was a calculated risk, sir. We believed the internal mechanism was jammed. The impact was necessary to free it. The official looked at Jin for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he looked back at the core, its blue light pulsing steadily. He watched it as if waiting for it to fail. It did not. After several minutes of silence, the official gave a slow single nod. The chrysalis station is restored. Your team's unconventional approach has yielded a positive result. The Galactic Union notes your success. He turned and walked toward the door, his technicians packing their gear to follow. He paused at the doorway and looked back at them, his gaze lingering on Jin. Do not let it happen again, he said. Then he was gone. The docking bay doors sealed behind them. The Union ship detached and moved away, disappearing into the starry blackness. The silence in the core room was profound. The threat was over. They were safe. Day let out a whoop of joy, the sound echoing in the large room. We did it! We really did it! Hana leaned against the console, her legs suddenly weak. The relief was so strong it felt like pain. She looked at Jin. He was looking at the core, his expression unreadable. She walked over to him. He knew, she said quietly. That official knew we hit it, Jin nodded. I think so. But he did not care, Hana said, the realization dawning on her. Because it worked. The core is working. That was all that mattered to him in the end. The core is working, Jin agreed. Hana looked at the man beside her. She had thought him unprofessional, illogical, even dangerous. Now she saw him differently. He was not a rule breaker. He was a problem solver, and he had solved a problem that the entire Galactic Union could not. She thought about his words. Simple problem in a complex machine. Maybe the galaxy was too focused on the complex. Maybe humanity's strength was in remembering the simple things. Percussive maintenance, she said again. This time she did not say it with scorn. She said it with the beginning of understanding. It was not in the manual, but perhaps it should be. The official report was filed. It was a dry technical document that used words like targeted kinetic realignment and mechanical recalibration to describe what had happened. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic language, saying a lot without saying anything at all. The Galactic Union accepted it without further question. The chrysalis was back on the network, its powerful signal cutting through the nebula once more. Their mission was a complete success. A transport ship arrived a week later with a new crew, a team of 3 who would take over the long-term operation of the station. The handover was efficient and quiet. The new crew had read the report. They looked at Jin, Hana, and Day with a mixture of curiosity and respect. They asked no difficult questions. Soon, Jin, Hana, and Day were back on their own ship, the familiar hum of its engines a comforting sound. They watched the chrysalis grow smaller in their view screen, a bright jewel against the dark nebula now full of light and purpose. The journey home was quiet. Each of them was lost in their own thoughts. Day spent his time writing a personal log. He described everything in great detail. The dead station, the hopelessness, the moment Jin had smacked the core, the incredible sight of it waking up. He knew he would never forget it. He felt like he had witnessed something important, something more than just a repair. Hana was different. She was quieter. She spent less time with her datapads and more time looking out at the stars. The strict, orderly world of procedures and protocols she had always lived in now felt a little less solid. She had seen the impossible happen by breaking every rule. It was a confusing feeling. She had been right according to the book, but she had been wrong in reality. Jin had been wrong according to the book, but he had been right in reality. Which was more important? One evening she found Jin in the ship's small workshop. He was taking apart a malfunctioning food dispenser motor. The parts were laid out neatly on a cloth in front of him. Hana, he said without looking up. He seemed to know it was her. She leaned against the doorway. I have been thinking, she said. Jin nodded, carefully cleaning a small gear with a brush. I have been thinking about the core, Hana continued. The Galactic Union called its failure permanent. Their science said it could not be fixed. Their data proved it, but they were wrong. Not wrong, Jin said, looking up at her. They were just looking at the problem from one side, the complicated side. But science is about the truth, Hannah said. And the truth was that the core could be fixed. The truth was that a switch was stuck. Jin corrected gently. The core was fine. The Union science was true for the core's brain. But they forgot about the core's body, the simple physical body. He held up the small greasy gear from the dispenser. This is a simple machine. If it gets stuck, you can see why. You can fix it. The quantum core is a very complex machine, but it is still a machine. It is built from pieces that can get stuck. He put the gear down. The Union builds perfect machines for a perfect universe. But the universe is not perfect. Things get stuck. Things get dirty. Things get old. Humans know this. We have always known this. We are used to things breaking. So we are good at figuring out why. Hannah was silent for a while, watching him reassemble the motor with smooth, confident movements. So it is not magic, she said finally. It is not a feel. It is a way of thinking. It is a way of thinking, Jin agreed. You look for the simple thing first. You assume the machine wants to work. You just have to find what is stopping it. The food dispenser motor whirred to life. It sounds smooth and healthy. Jin wiped his hands on a cloth. Hannah smiled. It was a small, thoughtful smile. Percussive maintenance, Jin smiled back. Sometimes it is the right tool for the job. When their ship finally docked at the main Galactic Union station, they were not expecting any welcome. They were just a survey team returning from a completed mission. But as they walked down the ramp, they saw a small crowd. There were other engineers, technicians, and even a few officials. They were all looking at Jin. Word had traveled fast. The story of the dead core that had been brought back to life was too good to keep secret. The official report was one thing, but the rumor was another. The rumor said a human had fixed the unfixable. A senior engineer with blue skin and 4 arms approached Jin. You are the one from the chrysalis? He asked. Jin nodded. The permanent core shutdown, the engineer said. How did you do it? The report was unclear. The crowd leaned in, eager to hear the answer. Jin looked at the engineer. He looked at the faces of the crowd. They were all brilliant minds, experts in fields he could barely pronounce. They were waiting for a complex answer. He thought about giving them one. He thought about talking about residual capacitance and mechanical failure modes, but then he decided not to. He kept it simple. The machine was not broken. Jin said, his voice clear and calm. It was just stuck. So I unstuck it. There was a moment of silence. Then a few of the engineers began to smile. A few laughed. They nodded to each other. They understood. Not the technical details, but the truth of it. It was an answer that made sense on a fundamental level. Hannah and Day stood behind Jin, watching. Day was grinning. Hannah felt a surge of pride. She was no longer confused. She saw it clearly now. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not just its intelligence, but its practicality. Its stubborn belief that no machine was truly dead until you looked at it from every angle, even the simple ones. They walked through the station, and people nodded to Jin with a new kind of respect. It was not the respect for a great scientist, but the respect for a person who could get things done. Later, as they prepared to go their separate ways, Hannah stopped Jin. Thank you, she said. Jin looked at her, a question in his eyes. You were right, Hannah said. I was so focused on the data I could not see the machine. You taught me to see it. You taught me that sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one. Jin just nodded. You just have to listen to what the machine is trying to tell you. He picked up his bag and slung it over his shoulder. He gave a final nod to Hannah and Day, and then he walked away, disappearing into the busy corridor. Hannah watched him go. She knew the galaxy was full of complex problems, but now she also knew that sometimes the answer was as simple as a well-placed smack.